Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a review on the Brother ScanNCut DX. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So just full disclosure, I've already used the ScanNCut one other time, but I did want to show you that there is a starter item in here that you can use to create your first project. So that's what this is. I will tell you this video is not going to be a step-by-step instruction on how to use the ScanNCut, but really the reason I had bought it was to determine whether this makes sense for me to use for cutting out stamps. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So here I'm turning on the machine. And the cool thing is I like that you don't need a computer to work this, which is my intention again is really just around cutting out stamps that I have. And it comes with a spatula for scraping off the mat, comes with a mat. I'll list at the end all the items that comes in the kit. Comes also with a marker, so you can put that in there and it can draw images. I'm inserting the cutting blade in here so we can get started on our first project. It also comes with a quick reference guide, so you can take a look at that. This is the ink and stamp set that I will be using to get started. So the inks over there are by Altenew, and it's a pink version for the flowers and green for the leaves. There's 4 different sets, and I'll show you those in a minute. I'm using 4 different stamp sets, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The first one was Painted Rose. The next one was Beautiful Day. They were both by Altenew. And then the other 2 are Mandy's Flowers. And this one is Plentiful Puns. So those are the 2 stamp kits, and they are by Simon Says Stamps. I also have Hero Arts black ink that I'm going to be using on one of the stamp sets. There is a pair of scissors and my Misty. Here's just a quick glance again at those inks from Altenew, and then also the first stamp set that I'll be using. And again, this is the Painted Rose. And what I'm taking is 2 8x11 cardstocks, and I'm cutting them in half just to make it easier to fit into the Misty. So let's get started on our first one. I've already put the paper in the Misty as well as the first layer of the stamp. So this stamp kit, the first 2 that I'm going to do are layered kits. You start with the biggest space of stamp, the base of the rose, and I use the lightest ink. You start adding layers onto it, and I'll stamp this twice because the first one was a little light, and so I want to make sure, and this is why I use the Misty. This is to make sure that I can stamp again in the exact same spot. I'm going to flip it around and do a second one. I think one of the benefits that I'm looking for in the ScanNCut is, can I stamp multiple times and have it just cut them all out? So I'm going to speed this up here, but basically what you're seeing is I'm putting the layers on, I'm cleaning the stamps in between. I use a water bottle to do that. You can use other products if you want. Water just works for me on these inks, but you'll see the layers start to build up. Again, one of them I use all 4 colors. The other one I only use 2, just as an experiment to see if the ScanNCut is going to be able to pick these up and cut out around them. So I finished with the 2 flowers, and now I'm about to do the same technique with the leaves. So I'll go ahead and place them in. Again, I'm starting with the first layer, and then I build up throughout those leaves. and you'll see the finished product when I'm done. There's a couple of leaves on here that I choose to only do one layer, and you'll see what happens when I go to do a scan and cut. So I'm going to move into the other set of stamps by Altenew, the Painted Rose, and I'm lining up again the first stamp level. I'm going to stamp the flowers in the pink, the lightest pink. You'll see on here that I have a couple of sayings that I wanted to try out to see if the ScanNCut would recognize it and be able to cut it. And so you'll see that at the end, but you'll see me move through here, and then I'll move into the leaf part of it. There's a few leaves that I do in green. So the next part of this experiment is to see how the ScanNCut does with just stamps that have outlines, and I'm just using black markers. Now, when I fast forward through this, you'll see I just do a stamping with the black Hero Arts ink, but I really would have colored them like with Copic markers or pencils or watercolors, something like that. In here for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and stamp them. And the first set I'm using is Mandy's Flowers. So I'm already diving into the next set, which is the Plentiful Puns. Again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm lining them up, and I'm just going to use the black ink to see what kind of cut it does. I do put some sayings in here and small butterflies to see how smaller things turn out. I mentioned earlier in the video that you don't have to use a Misty. In this case, I'm going to show you where I just use a regular block to put this on. I think this is especially true when you're just using black ink. So here are the final images. You'll see the two different stamp sets. The one on the right, and I'll zoom in a minute, but it is the image plus the die. So in this case, this set I bought and purchased the die, which is what I'm trying to replace with this ScanNCut. Is there a possibility that I won't need to buy these dies anymore? And I'll tell you what those prices are at the end of this. So I'm putting them on the mat now and lining them up, and I'm going to do a cut just like I did with the other images. You'll see when I get onto here, the majority of these images are going to scan, but let's take a look. So like much of this, I'm going to go ahead and speed through it. I think that there's enough videos out there, and if you guys are interested in me showing more on how to do the ScanNCut, comment below, and I can look into doing another video. Just for the sake of the length of this video, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I will say this. What you're seeing is me trying to figure out which images are showing up as going to cut the way that they should. So some things wind up being on here that I wind up having to delete, and that's what you see, just like I did the first time. So just know that that's what I'm trying to do. There's a lot of kind of back and forth on this with the stylus here, and it's really about just trying to find the images and get them cut. And I think the more I do this, the better I would get at it. So it's just cutting here. While I'm doing this, I do want to point out that I do create a border. There's an option to put a border around the item that's cutting. And I like that. I think it gives it a clean look. So you'll see that in the end results here. So for the most part, everything cut out. There's a couple that you'll see as I'm peeling this away that did not completely cut. And I knew that. I could see that pretty much when I was on the screen. So 4 was able to be cut out, but the U did not because they were so close together. It had trouble reading them. But the flowers, they cut perfectly. So again, this would usually be colored in. I would color in before cutting it, but I just wanted to see how it worked. And I will use these stamps in a future card. So look for that in the next couple of weeks. This was really, again, just about wanting to see what it would recognize on the scanner and cut and what it wouldn't. This did cut the word thank you. Unfortunately, when I was trying to get it off, the mat was really sticky, and so it did not come off very well. But the butterflies cut, everything cut, except then what's left on here, these words and letters, they cut individually, and it just wound up being a hot mess. So this is what was left over from it. Again, the flowers just cut really beautifully, and so did the butterflies, and they were pretty small. Next, I'm going to cut the flowers, and I'm going to put it in, and we'll do a scan just like we did before. So we're going to scan this in. This one's in color, so I want to make sure I change it over to the color setting. And it does a scan, and I quickly realized, and I'll zoom in here a little bit so you can see it better, that some of the images scanned and others really did not. So the ones where it's more the outline of the leaf did not scan. And what you're going to see me go through here is a series of, okay, how do I fix this? I wind up just really scanning the right side first, which is the leaves that are at the top of the screen, plus one of the flowers. So it seemed to recognize that pretty easily. And I was trying to delete other stuff, and I really found out that I think if I were to do this over again, I would have done the sheets separately and scanned the one on the right hand side. Again, it was easily identified, and so that's what you see me doing here. I'll get rid of a couple of things that clearly aren't going to scan, such as the saying. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to fast forward through this and then come back. So again, on this one, I'm going in on the last one. I'm going to rescan it. And what's really going to pick up are the 2 flowers and the leaf at the bottom. I don't even try to cut those other leaf outlines. It really does not recognize it, and it just doesn't make sense. The cuts that I'm doing in here too, I should mention that they go around the outline. There are cuts you can do where you go around the object with like a square, and I think I had mentioned this earlier on in the video, but like a square or a circle if you really didn't care about getting a close cut. I do. From a card perspective, it just makes sense to get a close cut to this versus a more, maybe if you had a saying, you could do something where you had an oblong box around it and you didn't care if it got close and tight. So that's something I think I'd want to play with in the future. So these did cut out really, really well. So I was happy with that. You can see I didn't even make an attempt to do the other ones. And here's the final view of all the ones that did a really good cut. So here are some of my final thoughts. I'm going to show you a list here of everything that comes with the kit. So this is just the standard packaging. It includes all of these things, which I had showed you at the beginning. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. Is this, which is my basic question, cost effective? So when you look at the machine, the Brother ScanNCut, the DX, it sells on Amazon for $321.70. It sells on HSN and probably other places for $399.95 or 5 payments of $79. And I'll put links below to both of these sites as well as the stamps and die sets if you're interested in those. So does it make sense from a cost perspective? If you figure, and I'm going to use the lower price of Amazon at $321.70, and on average, these large kits run me between $21 and $29. So on average, around $25. It would take about 13 sets of not purchasing them to break even on this machine. So if you are a crafter who buys a lot of dies, this could be a really good investment. If you only buy a couple here or there, it may not make sense. So that's my video today. Thanks for hanging in. Give me a thumbs up if you like this. And if you can, hit the subscribe button. And if you want alerts, hit that bell and you'll get those. So thanks again for joining. I know it was a long video. Hopefully you found this helpful. Put comments below if you had this or you're interested in purchasing this or have questions. Thanks so much. Bye.